What are you doing in here? This place is closed.
Closing up for the night. This is my store. Your store.
Right, step hands behind your back. You are being booked for trespassing.
The store was quiet. It was almost 11 o'clock on a Friday night, and the last customer had walked out 40 minutes ago. The lights were still on because the owner was still inside, restocking shelves, counting the register, mopping the floor between the checkout lanes like he had done every single Friday night for the past 11 years. His name was on the business license. His name was on the deed. His name was literally printed in large letters across the front window of the building facing the street. None of that would matter to the officer who pulled into the parking lot that night, saw a black man moving around inside a closed store, and immediately reached for his radio. What happened next would be captured on 6 separate security cameras, witnessed by 2 employees who hadn't left yet, and ultimately cost the city of Harlow Falls $500,000. This is the story of Devin Wallace, a man who built everything he had from nothing, and the night a single officer's assumptions nearly destroyed it all. Before we go any further, drop in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing our community from all over the world. And if you believe that racial bias in policing must be exposed and held accountable, make sure you like this video and subscribe. Let's get into it. This is real, and this happened to Devin Wallace, who was 41 years old, and every single year of those 41 years had been a lesson in working harder than the people around you and expecting nothing to be handed to you. He had grown up in the Eastport neighborhood of Harlow Falls, a section of the city that most locals knew for 2 things: good food, and being perpetually overlooked by city planners. The streets of Eastport had corner stores that closed before dark, a single grocery chain that raised its prices year after year while the quality declined, and a community that had been quietly demanding better options for decades. Devin had watched his grandmother spend 45 minutes on the bus just to reach a decent grocery store. He had watched his mother budget carefully around produce prices that fluctuated wildly because there was no real competition in the area. By the time he was a teenager, he had a very specific idea of what he wanted to do with his life, even if he couldn't yet articulate it clearly. He started working at 16, stocking shelves at a regional grocery chain called Harlow Fresh, which had one location on the far edge of the Eastport district. He worked after school and on weekends, and he watched everything. He watched how the store manager interacted with vendors. He watched how inventory was tracked and rotated. He watched how displays were built to move product, and which sections drew the most foot traffic at different times of day. He asked questions. He took notes. He annoyed his supervisors constantly with observations they hadn't asked for, and eventually, they promoted him just to redirect his energy somewhere productive. By 22, Devin was an assistant manager. By 26, he was managing the entire location. And by 30, he had saved enough, combined with a small business loan and a modest investment from his uncle, to lease a space in Eastport and open his own store. He called it Wallace Fresh Market. The early years were difficult. Devin will tell you that himself without hesitation. Cash flow was tight, suppliers were skeptical of a new operator, and there were months where he paid his employees before he paid himself. There were nights he slept in the stockroom when deliveries were coming at 5 in the morning, and he couldn't afford to miss them. There was a refrigeration unit failure in year 2 that nearly wiped him out, and only a combination of emergency loans, community support, and 16-hour workdays kept the lights on. But the store survived. And then it grew. Devin understood the community he was serving because he was part of it. He stocked products his customers actually wanted: Caribbean spices, West African staples, halal meats, the exact brands that other stores in the city either didn't carry or charged absurd premiums for. He hired locally, almost exclusively from the Eastport neighborhood, and he built a reputation as an employer who paid fairly and treated his staff with respect. By the time Devin was 38, Wallace Fresh Market was one of the most successful independent grocery stores in the city. He had expanded the floor space twice, added a deli counter, a small butcher section, and a prepared foods case that became genuinely famous for its rotisserie chicken. Local food critics had written about the store. A regional business journal had featured Devin in a profile about entrepreneurs who had changed their communities. He had received a small business award from the City Chamber of Commerce, presented at a dinner he had attended in a rented tuxedo, and spent 3 weeks preparing a speech for. His mother cried at that dinner. She told him afterward that his grandmother, who had passed 4 years earlier, would have wept to see it. Devin framed the award and hung it on the wall near the store entrance, right below the framed business license with his name printed across the top. Both of them would be on that wall the night Officer Raymond Stokes walked through the front door. Raymond Stokes had been with the Harlow Falls Police Department for 12 years. He had joined at 24, drawn to law enforcement by a combination of genuine desire to serve and a personality that was frankly, by the accounts of multiple colleagues, better suited to authority than to patience. He moved quickly through his early assignments, earned commendations for 2 arrests that made local news, and developed a reputation as someone who trusted his instincts above most other things, including procedure. His instincts, as it turned out, had a very specific pattern. In 12 years on the force, Stokes had accumulated 23 civilian complaints. Of those 23 complaints, 18 involved allegations of racial profiling, use of excessive force against minorities, or both. Internal Affairs had investigated 7 of those complaints, and flagged what they described in their reports as a pattern of conduct warranting further review. That review never resulted in termination. It never resulted in suspension beyond a few days here and there. Stokes knew how to write an incident report that made his actions sound reasonable in hindsight. He knew which supervisors would accept his version of events. He knew, after 12 years, exactly how much he could get away with. He had never been held accountable. Not really. On the night of February 14th, Stokes was working a late patrol shift in the Eastport district. At 10:52 p.m., Stokes drove his patrol car slowly past Wallace Fresh Market. The store's interior lights were on. Through the front windows, he could see a black man moving between the aisles and the front counter. Stokes pulled into the parking lot and stopped his vehicle. He sat there for several minutes watching. What he was observing was Devin Wallace, in his own store, doing what he did every Friday night, restocking the front-end displays, reconciling the day's sales with the inventory system, and preparing the bank deposit bag for the Saturday morning drop. Devin was wearing a Wallace Fresh Market polo shirt, the same shirt with his store logo embroidered on the left chest. His keys were on his belt. His phone was sitting on the counter next to a handwritten inventory checklist. Stokes did not see a store owner closing up. Stokes saw a black man in a closed store after hours. That, according to Stokes's own worldview, meant one thing. He stepped out of his patrol car. Devin heard the front door open and looked up from the inventory sheet he had been reviewing. He saw a police officer walk in. He didn't reach for anything. He didn't move toward the door. He set down his pen and said the most natural thing in the world. "Hey, officer. We're closed for the night, but can I help you with something?" What happened in the next 22 minutes was captured in full by 6 security cameras installed at various points throughout the store's interior and exterior. The footage, which Devin would later release publicly, showed every word, every gesture, and every decision made by both men during that encounter. Stokes walked toward the counter with his hand resting on his service weapon. His body language was already confrontational. He had made up his mind before he walked through the door. "Keep your hands where I can see them," Stokes said. "Step away from the counter." Devin raised his hands and stepped back. His expression on camera showed confusion, not aggression. Not panic. Just the particular, exhausting confusion of a man who had done nothing wrong and was suddenly being treated as if he had. "What's going on?" Devin said. "I own this store. I'm just doing my closing." "You own this store," Stokes repeated. His tone made it clear he didn't believe it. "Yes, sir. Devin Wallace. Wallace Fresh Market. My name's on the window." Devin carefully reached into his back pocket, moving slowly with his hands visible the entire time, and produced his wallet. He handed over his driver's license. Stokes examined it. Devin's address was local. His name matched the store's name. And the business license on the wall behind Devin's head, framed, clearly visible, absolutely current. Read, Devin Wallace, licensed proprietor, Wallace Fresh Market. None of it moved Stokes. Having ID doesn't prove you own this business, Stokes said. Devin took a breath. On camera, you can see him making a deliberate choice to stay calm, to not let his voice rise. He pointed at the wall. Officer, the business license is right there. It has my name on it. The deed to this property is in my office. I have utility bills, vendor invoices, tax records, whatever you need to see. Just tell me what would prove it to you. Stokes looked toward the wall. He looked at the business license. He looked at it for approximately 2 seconds, and then looked away. That could be anything, he said. It's a state-issued business license, Devin said. Could be fake. Devin was quiet for a moment. Then he said very carefully, What would you need to see to believe me? Stokes didn't answer that question. At 11:04 p.m., Patricia, a regular customer who had been shopping at Wallace Fresh Market for 7 years, pushed open the door and saw Devin with his hands raised and a police officer behind his counter. Devin? What's happening? Miss Patricia, Devin said. This officer seems to think I broke into my own store. Patricia's expression on camera is something people who have watched the footage describe as a kind of pure, immediate outrage. Officer, what are you doing? This is Devin's store. I've been shopping here for 7 years. Devin Wallace. He owns this place. Ma'am, I need you to leave the premises. This is an active investigation. Devin gave her a small, tired shake of his head, the kind that says, Please go, don't make this worse for yourself. She backed toward the door reluctantly, but she pulled out her phone the moment she stepped outside and began calling Devin's wife. Inside, Stokes ran Devin's license through his portable terminal. The result came back within 2 minutes. No criminal record, no warrants, no violations. Nothing. A completely clean history. Devin watched Stokes look at that screen. He watched the officer's expression show no change whatsoever. He watched the man look at a clean record and feel absolutely nothing shift in his certainty. Turn around, Stokes said. Hands behind your back. Devin stared at him. You're arresting me. You're being detained for trespassing and suspicion of burglary. Turn around, Devin said quietly. I own this building. I have owned it for 11 years. My name is on the license on that wall. My employee is in the back of this store. A customer just told you exactly who I am. And you ran my license and found nothing. What justification could you possibly have for this? Turn around now or I will turn you around. Something in Devin's expression, visible on all 6 cameras from 6 different angles, was not defeat. It was not fear. It was the particular, devastating settling of a man who understood that the truth he was standing on was not going to protect him right now. Not from this. Not tonight. He turned around. He put his hands behind his back. The handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists. Devin Wallace, owner of Wallace Fresh Market, was arrested in his own store at 11:09 p.m. on February 14th. He was charged with criminal trespass and suspicion of burglary. He was walked out through his own front door in handcuffs, past the large lettering that read Wallace Fresh Market, past Patricia who was still outside and who began yelling the moment she saw him emerge in cuffs. The Harlow Falls Police Department's central booking area is a large, fluorescent-lit space that never fully quiets down, even on a Friday night. There were 2 other officers processing paperwork when Stokes walked Devin through the doors, and both of them looked up. One of them was Officer Brandon Webb, a 7-year veteran who had been to Wallace Fresh Market more times than he could count. It was 3 blocks from his apartment. He did a visible double-take. Wait, Devin? Devin looked up. Officer Webb. What is happening right now? Stokes guided Devin toward the booking desk. Found him in a closed business after hours. Trespassing and burglary. Webb looked from Stokes to Devin to Stokes again. That's Devin Wallace. He owns that store. I buy my groceries there twice a week. He couldn't verify ownership, Stokes said. His name is literally on the building. Wallace Fresh Market. Devin Wallace. Webb looked at Devin with an expression of genuine disbelief. How is this possible? The desk officer on duty, Sergeant Odell Greer, had been with the department for 19 years. His internal warning system for situations about to become serious problems activated immediately. He carefully removed Devin's handcuffs himself. Devin, in precise detail, described every moment from the time Stokes walked through his door. He described the business license on the wall. He described the employee in the back. He described Patricia's eyewitness confirmation. He described Stokes running his license and finding no record. He described asking Stokes what proof would satisfy him and never receiving an answer. And then Devin pulled out his phone and opened the Wallace Fresh Market security app. He turned the screen towards Sergeant Greer. 6 camera feeds. All still recording. All still accessible remotely. Every second of tonight is on camera, Devin said. High definition. Cloud storage. Already backed up. The booking area went quiet. Lieutenant Vera Okafor arrived at the station 27 minutes later. She was off duty. She came in anyway. She watched the footage on Devin's phone. By the time Devin had scrolled through 20 minutes of the security recording, Okafor's expression had moved through several stages and landed somewhere cold and deliberate. She walked to the office where Stokes was waiting. She came back out 11 minutes later. Officer Stokes is suspended effective immediately, she said. Badge and weapon have been surrendered. A formal internal affairs investigation will begin Monday morning. Devin picked up his keys from the booking desk. He walked out of the Harlow Falls Police Department. Devin got home at 1:23 in the morning. His wife, Simone, was awake. She had been awake since Patricia had called her from the parking lot. She had been awake calling their attorney, sitting at the kitchen table with her phone in her hand trying to breathe steadily. When Devin walked through the door, she held onto him for a long time without saying anything. Devin and Simone sat at the kitchen table until 3 in the morning. Devin talked through everything calmly and methodically. Simone took notes. By the time they were done, they had 4 pages of handwritten documentation of the night's events from his perspective. At 3 a.m., Devin logged into the security system and downloaded full copies of all 6 camera feeds. He saved them to 3 separate cloud storage accounts and emailed the files to his attorney with a subject line that read, "Please preserve, do not delete, evidence." By Saturday morning, Devin was back at the store. He opened at 8 o'clock. Several regular customers noticed nothing was different. Patricia was there when the doors opened, and she hugged him, and they didn't talk much more about the night before because Devin had a store to run. Word had spread through the Eastport community with the particular speed that serious things travel in tight neighborhoods. By noon, people who had heard what happened came to show their support. An older woman from 2 blocks over brought Devin a container of food. A father from the neighborhood's youth basketball league brought his 3 sons in and shook Devin's hand for a long time. Devin Wallace had built something for his community. His community was not going to let the previous night stand. Devin's attorney, Harold Frost, a civil rights lawyer with 26 years of experience and more than 30 wrongful arrest cases, reviewed the security footage on Saturday afternoon and said 4 words. "This is ironclad. Release it." They prepared a package, the written account, the 6 camera feeds edited into a cohesive 40-minute compilation, and a brief statement from Patricia confirming her role as an eyewitness. At 9 p.m. Saturday night, Devin posted the footage to his store's social media accounts. By midnight, it had been viewed 80,000 times. By Sunday morning, 3 local television stations had contacted Devin's attorney. By Sunday afternoon, the footage had been viewed over 1.2 million times. By Monday morning, over 3 million. What Devin noticed, watching the spread of the story from the back office of his store, was the particular quality of people's reactions when they watched the actual footage. It wasn't just anger. It was something more specific than that. The combination of watching someone be calm and reasonable and clear and documented and correct, and watching none of that matter to the person in front of them. People who had experienced that specific feeling, or who had feared it for their entire lives, recognized it instantly. The mayor's office issued a statement that named Officer Raymond Stokes directly, described the incident as a clear and inexcusable violation of a citizen's rights, and included a direct apology to Devin Wallace by name. Devin read the mayor's statement in his store office and said, according to Simone, exactly this. Good. Now let's see what they actually do. The internal affairs investigation into Officer Raymond Stokes began Monday morning and concluded in 9 days. 9 days because the evidence was not complicated. 9 days because when you have 6 high-definition camera feeds, 2 eyewitnesses, a booking sergeant present for the aftermath, 2 fellow officers who immediately recognized the wrongful nature of the arrest, and an officer with 23 existing complaints, 16 specifically involving racial profiling, there is not a great deal of investigative ambiguity to navigate. The investigators reviewed every piece of footage frame by frame. They interviewed Patricia, Andre, Officer Webb, Sergeant Greer, and Lieutenant Okafor. They reviewed Stokes's 12-year history with the department in full, all 23 complaints, all 7 prior internal affairs reviews, every supervisor's report that had ever recommended further review, without following through. The final report used the phrase, systematic failure of departmental oversight, 4 times. It described Stokes's conduct as a textbook example of racially biased policing in which the officer's assumptions functioned as a complete substitute for any investigative process. It recommended immediate termination. The police chief accepted the recommendation. Stokes was formally terminated 6 weeks after the arrest. Because he was fired for cause, Stokes forfeited his pension. He lost his health benefits. He lost 12 years of service. But Devin's attorney was not done. Harold Frost had filed a federal lawsuit 3 weeks after the arrest, before the internal affairs investigation even concluded. The complaint was built for maximum impact, false arrest, illegal detention, Fourth Amendment violations, 14th Amendment equal protection violations, intentional infliction of emotional distress, malicious prosecution. The lawsuit named Stokes personally, the Harlow Falls Police Department, and the city itself, on grounds that the department's documented failure to address Stokes's 16 prior complaints constituted a policy of deliberate indifference to citizens' civil rights. The demand was $500,000. Harold held a press conference on the steps of the federal courthouse and played 12 minutes of the security footage on a large outdoor screen. He said, "There is no universe in which this arrest was justified. The only explanation for why none of this was sufficient for Officer Stokes is the one explanation no one in the department wants to say out loud. We're saying it. And the footage says it for us." The city's legal team reviewed the case and reached their conclusion within 4 days. They could not win. The footage destroyed every possible defense. Stokes's history made any argument about isolated misjudgment impossible. They recommended settlement. The city of Harlow Falls settled for the full $500,000 4 months after the lawsuit was filed. The settlement agreement included written apologies from both the police chief and the mayor, and a requirement that the Wallace Fresh Market footage be incorporated into the department's mandatory training curriculum. Devin's attorney had insisted on that last provision. Devin had been the one to suggest it. "Someone's going to learn from this," he had said. "That's not optional." The formal apology was delivered in person. The police chief and the mayor came to Wallace Fresh Market on a Tuesday afternoon during the lunch rush. Devin had not staged this. He simply told them what time the store was busiest. They walked in, and the news had gotten out, and there were cameras from 3 television stations in the parking lot. Devin met them at the front of the store in his Wallace Fresh Market polo shirt. Devin accepted the apology. He thanked them for coming in person. And then he said something the television cameras caught clearly, that the news stations aired in full, and that became perhaps the most quoted line from the entire incident. "This settlement, and this apology, do not erase what happened. They don't erase the feeling of having your hands cuffed behind your back in your own business. They don't erase what my daughters heard when we talked to them about what happened to their father. What they do is create a record. A public record that says, assumptions based on race have consequences. Evidence has power. And cameras never forget. He paused. That plaque on the wall over there has my business license on it. It has been there for 11 years. Officer Stokes looked at it and decided it wasn't real. I want every person who comes into this store from now on to see it the first thing when they walk through that door. Because it was real on the night of February 14th. And it was real every single day before that. And it will be real every day from here on. Someone in the back started clapping. And then everyone else joined in. Raymond Stokes applied to 4 other police departments in the state after his termination. All 4 had seen the footage. 3 declined without comment. 1 responded with a brief letter noting that the applicant's history did not meet their standards for employment. A 5th department in a neighboring state found the footage during their background review. He was not called for an interview. His law enforcement career was over. At 42 years old, Raymond Stokes began working security at a warehouse outside the city for slightly above minimum wage. He gave one interview, approximately 8 months after his termination. He said he stood by his actions. He said the situation had been misrepresented by the footage. The anchor asked him, specifically, why he had not looked at the business license on the wall. Stokes said it could have been fake. The anchor asked if he had taken any steps to verify whether it was fake. Stokes said he had used his judgment. The anchor asked what his judgment had been based on. Stokes did not answer. Meanwhile, Wallace Fresh Market continued to grow. The $500,000 settlement was invested with precision. Devin expanded the store's floor space for the 3rd time, adding a full-service seafood counter, something the Eastport neighborhood had never had access to without a long bus ride. He hired 11 new employees, all from the neighborhood, bringing his total staff to 27. He launched a community-supported agriculture program selling subscription boxes of local produce at accessible prices, something he had wanted to do for years. The framed business license near the store entrance was joined, within 6 months of the incident, by a small bronze plaque. Devin had it made himself and mounted it below the license. It read, "Verified. Documented. And still here." Per the terms of the settlement, the Wallace Fresh Market security footage was incorporated into the Harlow Falls Police Department's mandatory training curriculum. But the ripple effect did not stop there. Harold Frost shared the footage and case documentation with a civil rights advocacy organization that worked with police departments across the country on bias training. Devin gave them permission to use the materials, on one condition, that his name and his store's name were always attached to the case. "Abstractions are easy to dismiss," Devin told Harold. "A real person with a real store and a real camera system, that's harder to dismiss." Within 18 months of the incident, the footage was being used as a training case study in police departments in 7 states. Devin was invited to speak at 3 of those departments' training sessions. He accepted all 3. He stood in front of rooms full of officers and described the night of February 14th from the inside. He described what it felt like to be in your own building, doing your own work, and watch another person decide that your explanation for your own presence was insufficient. He described the specific quality of that moment when reason stops working, when the truth you are standing on simply does not connect with the person in front of you. He did not speak with anger. He had made a deliberate choice about that. Anger would have let people in those rooms dismiss his words as emotional. He wanted them to have no cover. At one training session, a young officer asked Devin what he thought about the profession, whether he believed real change was possible. Devin thought about the question for a moment. "I hired Andre 7 years ago," he said. "He was 20. He had a record, minor stuff, but a record. Most employers wouldn't look at him twice. I looked at what he could do and what he was trying to do, and I gave him a job. He was in the back of my store the night this happened, and he came out front to witness what was happening, and he didn't run. He stood there and documented what he saw. That's character. That's someone doing the right thing when it's easier not to." He paused. "Whether a profession is salvageable depends on whether the people in it are willing to do that," to stand in the difficult moment and do the right thing instead of the easy thing. The question isn't really whether the profession is salvageable. The question is whether the people in it are willing to salvage it. It is 3 years after February 14th. Wallace Fresh Market has expanded to a second location, in a neighborhood with the same profile Eastport once had, an underserved community, limited grocery access, people who deserved better options. Devin opened the second store 16 months after the settlement, and staffed it almost entirely from the surrounding neighborhood. The original Eastport location remains the flagship. Devin still works there most days, still does his own closing most Friday nights, still counts the register himself, still checks the inventory before he leaves. The business license is still on the wall near the entrance, still framed, still clearly visible to anyone who walks through the door. The bronze plaque is below it. His younger daughter recently told Devin that she thinks the reason he keeps the license so prominent is not really for the customers. It's for himself. A daily reminder that he built something real, and he proved it, and it's still there. Devin told her she might be the smartest person in the family. Raymond Stokes is still working the warehouse. The footage of February 14th has now been viewed, across all platforms and repostings, over 14 million times. Devin saw that number recently and thought about what his grandmother would have said. She would have said, "You didn't ask for any of this. You just asked to close up your store in peace. And when they wouldn't let you, you made sure the whole world saw exactly what happened." That's not a small thing. He went back to counting the register. This story is about a lot of things. It is about what happens when bias becomes a substitute for procedure, when an officer's assumptions about who belongs somewhere override every piece of evidence in front of him. It is about the particular kind of courage required to stay calm in a situation designed to make you react, because you understand that your reaction will be used against you. It is about what documentation can do. The fact that 6 cameras recorded every second of that night meant that no one could later construct a version of events that erased what actually happened. The truth was preserved. The truth was permanent. It is about accountability, not just one officer's accountability, but the accountability of a system that had allowed him to operate for 12 years with 23 complaints and no serious consequences. Accountability is not one moment. It is a practice. An institutional commitment. A willingness to act on what the patterns are telling you before the cameras force you to. And it is about what Devin Wallace did with his 11 years and his building and his business license and his security system and his refusal to be anything other than exactly who he was. He told the truth. He preserved the evidence. He made sure the world could see. And then he went back to work. If you know someone who has faced discrimination in their own business or workplace, share this video with them. Drop in the comments, what do you think communities can do to better support business owners when things like this happen? What role does documentation, cameras, records, witnesses, play in holding systems accountable? If you believe that truth and evidence can defeat injustice, subscribe. Because we will keep bringing you stories of people who refuse to be erased. And we will keep telling the truth about what assumptions cost.